Happy holidays, Bat fans! We're taking a break this time around, but instead presenting a special we recorded 3 years ago for our Patreon supporters. A 2-hour discussion of the 1967 Nancy Sinatra TV special, Movin With Nancy. You'll hear us explain the choice of topics shortly. Remember that our Patreon supporters help us keep To the Batpoles and the other Deconstructing Comics podcasts going. In exchange for their support, patrons get outtakes from every To the Batpoles episode, videos that Paul and I make to discuss 20th century TV trivia or other topics, and discussions of the early issues of The Amazing Spider-Man. Join our other patrons at patreon.com/deconcomics. Now on with the show.
I gotta get out of this town. I gotta go someplace. I gotta get out of this town.
Welcome to a Patreon special about, of all things, Nancy Sinatra's 1967 special, Movin With Nancy.
Brought to you by RC, the Mad Cola. It's wild. It's a wild cola.
So this is, of course, Tim in Tokyo with Paul in Hanover, New Hampshire.
Wild.
And in To the Batpoles number 99, this special came up, and I was dying to say more about it, but we limited that conversation to what was probably the first kiss on American TV between a white person and a black person, which is part of this special, but rather than get that episode of Batpoles even further off track than it already was,
as is our usual,
we decided to do something special for Patreon, since maybe we haven't been doing enough of that. Anyway, so this special was first broadcast December 11th, 1967 at 8 p.m. Eastern on NBC. And I found out that it was rerun on April 15th, 1968 at 9 p.m. Eastern. So one of the many websites I looked at researching this, there was a page from TV Guide for the rerun, advertising the rerun with all these quotes from reviews about how great the special was. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was well regarded, and some awards and award nominations were passed out, which we'll get to. Now, before I discovered this in the process of researching the To the Batpoles episode, or the Bat Research Lab, these Batpoles were made for slidin.
That's just what they'll do.
I knew next to nothing about Nancy Sinatra. I just, I knew she was Frank's daughter, and I knew these boots were made for walking and something stupid, and that was all. I had no... I might have heard something else like when I was 2 years old on the radio or something, but those were the only two songs I was really aware of. Now, you said you were...
Something Stupid is a duet with Dean Martin, right?
I thought it was with her dad.
Oh, right, of course. Well, who knows? Maybe Dean Martin was her dad. I mean, the Rat Pack was very close.
To each other's wives?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
But you said that you really like Nancy Sinatra, so what's your relationship, so to speak?
Well, I can't go into that. I can't go into any details on the relationship here in Radio Land or Podcast Land. I can say, though, that I kind of fell in love with her when my friend Marvin Taylor, who's an old friend of my wife's, he's the tenured librarian of he's the head of special collections at NYU, and my wife used to work there. She used to teach English there.
Yeah, I met him at your wedding. Yeah.
Yes, wonderful guy. Introduced me to Nancy Sinatra, who was a great hero of his when he was quite young. And These Boots Were Made for Walking was one of his favorite songs, so he played it for me, and I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, I knew about this song. I'd heard it on, of all things, the Pee Wee Herman show, Pee Wee's Playhouse, sung by, I don't remember, they're triplets, I think, these triplets with beehive haircuts who always wore boots and played songs for Pee Wee whenever they would show up at the Playhouse. They did a great version of These Boots Were Made for Walking, which was a song I don't believe I'd ever heard before in 1995 or 4, whenever I first saw that episode of Pee Wee Herman. Yes, I watched Pee Wee Herman. I watched the Pee Wee's Playhouse in grad school. That's one of the things that got me through grad school. So I knew the song, I heard it from Marvin, and then I asked for the record for my birthday, and I think our parents gave me that record or the CD in maybe 2012 or 13, and I listened to it until, the laser practically wore out on my CD player. And it's great, but that's from 66. March 66 was when that was released.
Which album?
It's simply called Boots.
Okay.
And it is also produced by Lee Hazelwood, who appears in the special and produced the music, all of the music, and wrote or co-wrote all the songs, most of the songs anyway, on the special. Anyway, Hazelwood, infamously told Nancy Sinatra, because she was having trouble, her career was not really going anywhere, despite the fact that she was Frank Sinatra's daughter. Mm-hmm. And Frank Sinatra hooked her up with Lee Hazelwood, whom I unfortunately called Lee Greenwood when we last talked about this. So my apologies. I'm proud to be an American, because at least I know I'm free. That would be Lee Greenwood, the would-be Lee Greenwood. Anyway, so infamously, Lee Hazelwood told Nancy Sinatra she needed to sing These Boots Were Made for Walking as though she was she was a 14-year-old girl who slept with truckers.
Yeah, I ran across that too, with the F word in it. But yes.
Yes, indeed. And I have no way of knowing whether the F word was originally part of that conversation. Sometimes it's presented as such, sometimes it isn't. But in any event, that was the birth of her kind of throwdown vocal style. Like, it's my way or the highway. And there's great songs on Boots that are very much sort of circling around that, it's my way or the highway mentality. In Ain't Me, Babe, a Bob Dylan song, she transforms it into, a kiss-off song, even more than it was before, if that's possible. But stuff like I Move Around, a Lee Hazelwood original, is, it's all about how she's seen everything. She's gone all over the world because I saw you with her. Now I move around. Mm-hmm. So that kind of extreme reaction, sort of like the flapper of 1920s Hollywood. She's extremely independent, but all she really wants is a man. She created this persona of being, just totally into her own pleasure and willing to, to flout any convention she can find, except the convention that says you need to end up as a young heterosexual woman, you have to end up with a man. But there's this kind of, kitten with a whip vocalization about her voice that I just fell in love with immediately. And I wouldn't even have to look at her face in order to just be completely in love with her voice and her persona. So that's my my personal take on Nancy Sinatra, such as it is.
It was kind of pointed out to me how, when we were like growing up and listening to the radio, we listened to stations that had played a lot of 60s rock, but not really 60s pop.
Yes.
So
there's a big distinction.
Completely missed Nancy Sinatra at that age because we were hearing the Beatles and the Stones and Hendrix and the Doors and all that stuff.
Yeah, Jethro Tull, blah blah blah, Nazareth or whatever. But we weren't hearing anything that had like gigantic trumpet sections in it.
Right.
Which was what most of America was listening to in the 1960s. Trumpet, brass, whatever. In fact, at least the music for the Movin' With Nancy special, it was recorded with the Wrecking Crew, which is this, very famous, huge group of instrumentalists who also recorded the Beach Boys album Pet Sounds. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if they were involved in Boots or not. I couldn't tell you that. Surprisingly, the Boots entry in Wikipedia is just a stub. It surprises me a great deal.
Well, I guess we need to get to work writing it. But anyway.
Yes, I guess we do.
Now, some of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this have to do with kind of maybe my memories of childhood, because I have no idea if our parents watched this or not, or if I saw it when I was 2 years old. But some things about it, which I'll get to, sort of made me think about. So I was 2 at the time. It kind of reminded me of when I was 5, just 3 years later. Well, and certainly the NBC Peacock thing at the beginning, I remember that very well.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
They were still using that same animation a few years later.
Yes, I remember that very well too, with the kind of the peacock feathers that look like paintbrushes.
Mm-hmm. And for me, it was like, it's a cartoon, because cartoons are always good. So, and when they would show animations of during the moon missions, they would show animations of what was supposed to happen or whatever. Like, I'd ask Dad, "Is this a cartoon?"
That's great. I remember very well being fascinated whenever some other kind of television show inserted an animated bit. Like there was an episode of Love American Style that had an animated bit. Like one of its segments was an 8-minute cartoon. And of course, you and I were this really was our MO. If we saw a cartoon anywhere on anything, suddenly it was the most important thing going on, not only in the room, but possibly in the tri-state area. Yeah, I was just like, whoa, this is it.
Cartoons
everything must
equals awesome.
Everything must stop.
Animated or not, if it's a cartoon,
yes, that's
awesome.
That's right. That is an interesting moment in our childhood, which lasted for 3 or 4 years at least.
I thought it was still going on now.
Well, I have to admit, I spent a lot of time last week watching Uncle Grandpa reruns from Cartoon Network.
Dear.
Very funny show. In fact, someone used the phrase, don't Bogart that thing, kid. Which, it's a don't Bogart that joint, my friend. A song for the soundtrack of Easy Rider. It's all about holding on to the joint for too long.
I see. Okay.
I couldn't believe I heard the verb to Bogart on a cartoon. But I guess that's why now I still want the world to stop when cartoons come on.
So, now we watched the special on YouTube, and it seems to have been ripped from the DVD release that came out in 2000.
Yes, and the 2000 DVD release is out of print, but it was published by Image Entertainment, which is a company that, like Kino Lorber, published a lot of kind of hard-to-find, important historical films, including Movin With Nancy. And I believe, at least from the YouTube video that I watched of it, and I think it was the same one that you did, I'm sure, the soundtrack seems to have been remixed in stereo. I doubt it was in stereo in the first place.
Right, yeah, it wouldn't have been in stereo for TV in '67 because there was no such thing as a stereo TV then. But
it would have been completely unnecessary. Of course, the album that was struck from it, that is the album "Movin With Nancy," would have been recorded in stereo.
Sure,
but so maybe some of the tracks. For all we know, the entirety of the Movin With Nancy special is just like lip-synced versions of either songs from that album or songs from other artists' albums, like, Dean Martin's couple of songs, for example.
Now, the director of the special was Jack Haley Jr., who won an Emmy for it. Mm-hmm. And by the way, yes, he's the son of that Jack Haley.
Yes,
from Wizard of Oz.
He won an Oscar for being the Tin Man's son.
And David Winters was nominated for an Emmy in the category Special Classification of Individual Achievements. He was the first choreographer to be nominated in that category, and that led to the creation of the Outstanding Achievement in Choreography Emmy.
Interesting. So a new category had to be invented because someone noticed something unusual was going on in this particular special. That's pretty cool.
Music was arranged and conducted by Billy Strange, who was a member of the Wrecking Crew.
Yes,
And
yes.
he's visible in one scene of the special. And he did all kinds of stuff. He had co-written hits for Elvis. He did work on These Boots Were Made for Walking.
And the Wrecking Crew was I just found this out as we were talking, that the Wrecking Crew, at least parts of the Wrecking Crew, the famous L.A. Wrecking Crew, were part of the recording sessions for These Boots Were Made for Walking as well.
And Wikipedia says he played the guitar on the Munsters theme.
The most famous guitar solo of our youth.
And it claims that he played on the Batman theme, too.
Wow, do you suppose he played the Batman guitar riff? The da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da?
Maybe.
That would be amazing. Wow, talk about 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, who says this special has nothing to do with Batman?
Seriously, that's funny. I should mention that Jack Haley Jr. is also the editor/director of 2 of a lot of people's favorite movies, That's Entertainment and That's Entertainment Part 2, which were compilations of Hollywood musicals that came out in 74 and 76, respectively.
Now, as I mentioned on To the Batpoles, the special is basically a string of music videos, which really nobody had done at the time, and a music special would have been, in front of a live audience and bring on the guest and chat a little bit, and the guest sings the song, and then maybe they do a skit or something. And
yeah, variety show format.
Yeah. Wikipedia says of the special, the general effect was of a dreamlike fantasy that flows from one location to the next.
That's accurate.
Yeah, I think so. Now, of course, as Paul's alluded to earlier, the single sponsor for this whole special was RC, and the video on YouTube includes the RC commercials, so we're going to have to talk about those too. But it opens on appropriately. Well, there's a car parked in front of a house, and then the door opens and you just see her boots.
Of course you do.
Obviously a reference to These Boots Were Made for Walking. And, Wikipedia quotes Nancy's commentary on the DVD, which apparently is not on YouTube. She says on that she wished that she had included that song in the special. But at the time, she wanted to showcase her other songs. I guess she figured everybody knows that song already, so I want to, get more of my other songs out there. Well, she had some other hits by this time, but
yes, that's true.
But yeah, the boots there are the main reference to it in the special. And she gets in the car, starts it up, and then I Gotta Get Out of This Town begins, the first song. And she's lip-syncing while she's driving. Is that really advisable? She doesn't look like she's watching the road very carefully. She's looking at the camera.
Yes, and she apparently doesn't have the lyrics memorized either, because they're probably running past her on a teleprompter under the camera.
I Gotta Get Out of This Town serves as the opening credits. I downloaded from Amazon, I guess, not from iTunes, the soundtrack of the special. Now, the song in the special has been extended to accommodate everything that's going on for the credits. And yet it's still in stereo. But it couldn't have been taken from the album exactly, because not only is it longer, but also there are some extra trumpet notes in it that kind of go with things that are happening on the screen. Like, when the titles appear, there's some extra trumpet blasts.
I gotta get out of this town.
So I'm wondering how they got that in stereo if they couldn't have taken it off of the album.
Good question. If anybody knows the answer, if any other Batman and Nancy Sinatra fans out there happen to know, that would be pretty useful.
I was kind of scratching my head over that line that she wants peaches and cream because she's tired of plums.
I'm gonna plant a love tree. I'm gonna pick me some. I want some peaches and cream. I'm tired of nothing but plums. I gotta get out of this town.
Yeah, that's
Is that
such
some sort of weak double entendre, or?
No, I don't think so. It's Lee Hazelwood had this strange personal mythology of objects that seemed to have significance to him, but not really to anybody else. Because if you ask him about the lyrics of, Some Velvet Morning, he would say, I thought Phaedra was the saddest goddess in the world. So, in Greek mythology, and she wasn't really a goddess. So I put her in the song. And Nancy Sinatra, infamously said in the 80s, I've been singing this song for 20 years and I have no idea what it means.
Yeah, I found that too.
So yeah, plums, not really sure why plums, but apparently maybe Lee Hazelwood just really hates plums.
I guess. Of course, Nancy's not wearing a seatbelt. Should just point that out. Whereas Batman and Robin always did, so...
Yes, there's a major contrast between the two characters.
Yes. And during the credits, she drives by Lee Hazelwood sitting on a fence and blows off his clothes, and he's just wearing long underwear. I think there's some trumpet blasts there also that are added.
Get out of this town. You're more than I can stand.
And then drives by David Winters, who, he's sitting outdoors in a barber chair, and some girls are putting shaving cream on his face, and then Nancy drives by, the chair spins around, and now he's clean-shaven. It's a pretty good trick.
It is. Perhaps Nancy will drive past me the next time I need to shave.
Now, in the credits for who her guests are, when it gets to Dean Martin, you don't actually see Dean, you see a billboard for his movie The Ambushers. So, of course, I looked into The Ambushers.
Good.
So, now, interestingly, the movie came out a month after the special, on December 22nd, 1967. So this is sort of a promo for it, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be a little product placement.
So The Ambushers was the third of 4 films in the Matt Helm series of spy comedy movies, all of which starred Dean Martin. There's a trailer for it on IMDb, and judging from that, the main attraction of the film was chicks in bikinis. Because there are many in the trailer.
This is Dean Martin, alias Matt Helm, asking you to help me stamp out spies, or at least muss them up a little. In our new picture, The Ambushers, I got my hands full with Mataharas like Centaburger.
Skull.
Shirt Skull's got ice in it. Janice Rule, and those ever-loving sleigh girls. Don't shoot.
They get you when you're high.
Yes, I am coming across that right this moment.
And it seems to be a movie for the drunk, dirty old man market.
Not the stoner or the hippie market. That's funny.
Wikipedia says it was very loosely based on the novel of the same name by Donald Hamilton. Like the previous films, it followed the approach of being a spoof of the James Bond film series rather than a straight adaptation of Hamilton's novel.
Yes, there seemed to be a lot of that going around.
Yeah. Matt Helm's main nemesis is called Big O. So you get
pretty terrible.
Yeah, you get what the vibe of these films were. Was
very much. Oh yes, I'm watching the trailer right now and seeing chicks in bikinis and people windsurfing, and chicks in bikinis windsurfing, and now chicks in bikinis peeking out from behind palm trees.
Wikipedia also says this film is generally considered the weakest of the 4 Helm films, and is cited in the book The 50 Worst Films of All Time by Harry and Michael Medved. The Medveds also cited a review of The Ambushers by critic Judith Christ, which stated, "The sole distinction of this vomitous mess is that it just about reaches the nadir of witlessness, smirky sexiness, and bad taste, and it's dull, dull, dull to boot."
And everyone involved in the making of the film was drunk the entire time. Certainly, Dean Martin looks like he's been having a few. Of course, he always did in the trailer as he's facing the camera with his, extremely smoky cigarette. Anyway, it feels very, very Hugh Hefner.
Yeah,
all the way through.
And then Frank Sinatra is standing at the guard box as Nancy drives into some place or other. I guess it's the place where the balloon is for the second number.
Yes, it looks like a studio lot gateway, though, and Frank is actually wearing a security uniform as well, which is kind of great.
I want out of this town.
Okay, then it's time for the first ad break.
Movin' with Nancy. Brought to you by Royal Crown Cola. RC. It's a mad cola. RC, the one with the mad taste.
Hello there. I'm Art Linkletter.
So what exactly is Art Linkletter doing here? Any idea?
He's walking around an almost empty white studio.
Well, sure.
And he's talking on behalf of his associates at Royal Crown Cola.
Welcoming you to this very special hour of entertainment on behalf of my associates at Royal Crown Cola Company and its hundreds of bottlers.
Royal Crown Cola, God, I love advertising from the early television era. This is not that early anymore, but it feels like an ad for like Chesterfield cigarettes from some mid-50s show. And my associates at Chesterfield tell me that smoke from Chesterfield cigarettes improves the health of your T-zone. But the notion that everybody, we're all friends here, we're like in business together. Those of us who live in TV land, rather than the advertisers are paying us to say nice things about them, has a very kind of 50s, 60s ring to it that I can't quite put my finger on.
What cracks me up about that little clip is the way that he intones Nancy Sinatra's name. Sort of implies to me like you've probably never heard of this woman, but her name is Nancy Sinatra.
It's entirely appropriate that RC, America's fastest growing cola, is bringing you America's brightest young star, Nancy Sinatra.
Loosely translated, I, Art Linkletter, have never heard of this woman, but maybe you have. Yeah, maybe you've heard of her dad. I think I know who this guy is. I'm just surprised that Art didn't have a copy of The Game of Life with him. Since he used to show up at the cover of that. Or maybe Nancy Sinatra Says the Darndest Things. His shtick.
Escape! Come on over to Royal Crown Cola. It's a mad cola. RC, the one with the mad taste.
RC, it's a mad cola. Now, I wonder if they must have been referencing the movie Mad World from 1963. I mean, that's 4 years ago at this point. But I'm trying to think, was mad a part of like hippie slang also?
Yeah, I guess so.
Or it seems more like beatnik slang. But
yeah, it does. It does sound like mods and rockers.
It's mad, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. It's Maddie-o, Daddy-o. I'm sure it's supposed to sound, as hip as all get out. But once again, it sounds kind of like, the Dean Martin, drunk, dirty old man market was being appealed to. This is what drunk, dirty old men think beatniks say. It's a mad cola, but it has this kind of like sophistication about it, as though it's not really sophisticated, but it's, rather than just like crazy man, it's mad. It sounds more like a cross between a fantasy about British beatnikism and, just familiar phrases that ad writers like to use.
Well, and speaking of sophistication, so this first ad features Nancy herself singing the jingle, and she's drinking RC out of this big glass goblet, which just cracks me up.
And the goblet makes cameo appearances throughout the commercials later in the episode.
Yeah, not just the one she's in.
Yeah, it doesn't even look. It looks sort of like a cross between a champagne glass and a soda glass that someone wanted to make look like a champagne glass, in order to make it look classy, really classy.
And then on that last drum beat at the end of the tune, she nods, and I thought, wow.
The one with the mad taste. RC.
I don't know if that's 60s or if it's like Broadway musical or what that is exactly, but...
Yeah, Broadway musical's probably about right, but my first reaction to that was, Nancy, never, never, ever, please don't ever wear liquid paper as an eyeliner. It's super bad for your eyes. You're going to huff it accidentally, and then you're going to be hooked on it. It's going to be awful. So, right. So the nod, all that stuff is very, variety show stuff that you and I were seeing in the 70s, and on shows like Shields and Yarnell, one of the greatest variety show iterations of the 1970s, if not of all time.
Yeah. All right, then we come back from the ad, and this
is gonna run for like 75 minutes, isn't it?
At least, even without a letters section.
You're getting your $3 worth out there, Patreon folks.
Up and away. So of course there's a big hot air balloon there, and she talks to the audience a little bit.
Well, here we are, out of town, all alone, nowhere. But I'm going to fix that. Now, if you'd like to come along, come on, let's get moving.
And then she gets in the balloon and she starts singing, and the dancers show up also.
Uh-huh.
So, first of all, I need to talk about this song, because Up and Away is a song that I never wanted to give the time of day, because of my experience of it as a kid. I don't remember, of course, the 1967 original by the Fifth Dimension. I don't think I even knew that it was the Fifth Dimension until I was researching this special. But it was like all through the 70s, anytime there was a hot air balloon on the TV screen, you would hear this song.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got so hokey, and it was such a, what's the word I'm looking for? It was just a cliche.
Yeah.
And also, I think it popped up, I'm sure you remember well listening to KLYF, the beautiful music station from Des Moines in the 70s.
Oh, yes.
Going to sleep to that many a night when yes. I had trouble sleeping.
Mm.
And I'm sure that they must have played this song there, too. There's some Muzak version of it.
Would you like to ride in my beautiful balloon? Would you like to glide in my beautiful balloon? We could float among the stars together, you and I. Oh, we can fly, yeah, we can fly.
So speaking of interconnectedness, the original Fifth Dimension version of Up and Away, the instrumentalists were members of the Wrecking Crew.
Of course.
Not kidding, actually true.
But it just always seemed like a really square song to me. I couldn't even imagine it as being a hit, anytime after like 1955.
Yeah, well, it has this kind of Percy Faith groove about it that seems to, fit it well in the 60s and early 70s. It certainly fits well with what our mom was listening to at the very beginning of the 70s as we were hearing our first LPs.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like something teenagers would listen to, but maybe they did.
It sounds something more like what young adults would listen to when they're trying to be a little bit more upscale than they were as kids, but are still, into, simple, catchy melodies.
Although, now, I went to YouTube to listen to the Fifth Dimension version.
Would you like to ride in my beautiful balloon? Would you like to ride in my beautiful balloon?
And I found this really fantastic comment on YouTube on the video from someone named George Solomon.
Uh-huh.
And he wrote, "Nothing beats the summer of '67. Music was changing so fast. Every new song sounded like a new genre, leaving you with such a head rush you'd collapse into some fresh-cut grass, stare up at a sunny blue sky, and listen to your own breathing as the little transistor radio peeking out of your shirt pocket dazzled the summer air with the Supremes, the Beatles, Marvin Gaye, Lulu, Petula Clark, Dionne Warwick, Mamas and the Papas, and Aretha. Once in a blue moon mix. I was 7 years old, but it's still that vivid a memory."
Wow.
Yeah.
So this would have been that's quite poetic and quite appropriate. So that would have been the same summer that the Sgt. Pepper came out, the Summer of Love, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. Wow. Yeah, Petula Clark. I mean, it was quite a rich potpourri, shall we say, of pop music.
And 67, he seems to be more of a pop guy, this George Solomon, but that's the year of the Doors debut.
Yes, interesting. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd kind of forgotten until I looked it up, but there were no singles from Sgt. Pepper, and radio stations were playing the entire album.
Wow, that I did not know.
Back before they were worried about people taping the whole album off the radio.
Right. You could be arrested for excessively repetitive humming, I suppose, or something like that. You could copyright infringement.
But I would like to submit that Nancy's version of Up, Up, and Away is better than the Fifth Dimension's version.
Ooh.
Because I think her voice, her singing has more character to it. Mm-hmm. The way that they sing it, of course it's all of them together for most of the song, but it just feels kind of bland compared to hers.
Yeah.
Although I wish that she didn't drop out for the bridge and let the chorus take over.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to hear her singing the whole thing, but
Mm-hmm.
her version actually kind of makes me like the song, which is no mean feat.
Well, I guess not. I didn't realize that you had such kind of angry feelings toward this song. Tell me more about your rage against balloons. I'll play your psychoanalyst momentarily.
Well, it's just, so many eye-rolling moments that I heard this song in the past.
Yeah, I understand that. Whenever I think of that song, I think of We're Flying to the Moon in a Feather Balloon, a song that no one will remember, and probably including you.
Sugar Bears?
It's a Sugar Bears record that was cut off the back of a box of Super Sugar Crisp. It was no doubt intended to bring to mind Up, Up, and Away and My Beautiful Balloon.
Featuring a young Kim Carnes.
We're flying to the moon in a feather balloon. Don't know how long we'll be gone, but we will be home soon.
No doubt whatsoever.
I always imagined a hot air balloon with feathers all over the outside of it.
Up and away in my beautiful balloon.
And then we have the dancers, and those women are wearing really short skirts.
Yes, they are. And they jump really high. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, really high.
I did see a flash of underwear in one place, which was kind of inevitable under the circumstances.
And something of a relief. Of course, it is American television in 1967. It ain't HBO, so we're not going to see any loss of underpants anywhere in this special.
But every time I see the dancers show up, the first thing I think of is Jewel Hallmeyer. The Jewel Hallmeyer dancers from SCTV. I just couldn't stop thinking Jewel Hallmeyer.
Now, Jewel Hallmeyer was he was like the costumier of
the costume designer, and he was just sort of I looked it up a little bit, but I don't remember. I didn't put that in my notes, but yeah, they needed for I think it was a Lola Heatherton special.
Variety
they wanted
special.
To have dancers, and the dancers that they hired couldn't do bad dancing, so.
So I think they just got Jewel Hallmeyer's crew together and thought it would be it would be funny to name it after him.
And some writers, I think, and was what I read.
Yeah, so they're all wearing these, kind of like pink leotards. Their bodies are not the bodies of dancers, and it's awesome. And thus ends our SCTV reference, at least SCTV reference number 1 for this special podcast.
So most of the songs from the special are on the Movin' With Nancy soundtrack album. There are I guess 3 that were missing. One of them does show up on the currently available version that I bought from Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
The next song, Sugar Town, is from an earlier album called Sugar, and is not on the soundtrack album. Of course, with MP3s, you can do as I did and just download everything and put it together in a playlist, and then you can hear it exactly as it all appeared on the special.
Right, right. So was there another record called Town on
I don't know.
a later Nancy Sinatra record called just simply Town, in which the other half of the Sugar Town track appears?
Yeah, I was talking to our parents the other day, and I told them what we were going to record a podcast about the special, and they asked like what songs were in the special, and this was the only one of them that they remembered hearing on the radio back then.
Oh, that's interesting.
They knew Sugartown, and they knew These Boots Are Made for Walking, of course. Now, of course, at that time they were living in, and I was living. You were not living at all yet, but we were living in Newell, Iowa, which at the time was a fairly isolated place. They completely missed out on Beatlemania, they say. And part of the reason for that was that there was no CBS affiliate available, so they couldn't watch Ed Sullivan.
Wow, I'd never heard them say that before. That's interesting and not too surprising. It was difficult even when we were growing up to get, some stations. We had all the affiliates, but if we wanted to watch Batman 66, for example, we had to watch an ABC affiliate from, like a different market, and we couldn't always pick up the frequency.
Well, and that was only because we had the early version of cable TV. People in Centerville, if you didn't have a cable TV or a TV antenna on your roof, you could only get one channel.
yeah, and our cable was in fact, pretty much, hooked up to a giant tower. Not a satellite dish at the time, but just a giant antenna.
Yeah. Anyway, so Sugartown.
I got some troubles, but they won't last. I'm gonna lay right down here in the grass. And pretty soon all my troubles will pass, 'cause I'm in Sugartown.
Now, one of the things that I found doing research here was this interview in The Guardian in 2005 with Nancy. And according to her in that interview, Sugartown was about LSD.
Okay, that's a lot more interesting than I expected. Well, that kind of makes sense, because basically she's telling us that, the rest of the world can go fob off. She's talking about being completely isolated, having no friends, and not caring.
Yeah.
So the LSD might kind of put you in that outre mood.
And she also says in that interview that Some Velvet Morning, the next song we'll be talking about in a minute, was about sex and drugs, which is different from Hazelwood's story about that, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Well, to hear some of the more, Christian individuals in my more like conservative, I guess I should say, individuals in my grade school classes. Believe it or not, pretty much all rock and roll was about sex and drugs. They were apparently told this by their parents. And so, they said, I said something about listening to Styx when we were in 4th or 5th grade. And they said, they're all on drugs. Every rock musician is on drugs. It's like, you're in 4th grade. You've already been brainwashed by your parents into believing this and thinking it's a bad thing. Oh, sorry. Anyway. Not advocating. Definitely not advocating.
But she also talks in that interview from 2005 about how she had realized, this is the whole Hazelwood thing, that being squeaky clean wasn't going to work for her. I mean, she had been recording, according to Wikipedia, since about 1960. And aside from a couple of singles that charted in Italy, she'd had no success anywhere.
Right.
Until Hazelwood, Frank got her hooked up with Lee Hazelwood, and they put out These Boots Are Made for Walking and so forth. And she talks about how that there were double entendres in the songs, and she talks about how earlier, like, black R&B singers had done some super raunchy double entendres. She talks specifically about the song by Dinah Washington called Big Long Sliding Thing, which is ostensibly about a trombone, but if you look at the lyrics, that's not what it's about.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I even asked a man that played a steel guitar. He said that you don't need him to be moved 8 to the bar. He brought his amplifier and he hitched it in my plug. He planked it and he plunked it, but it just wasn't good enough. 'Cause I need my daddy with that big long sliding thing.
Dinah Washington, wow, she's responsible for a great soul R&B song called This Bitter Earth from probably about the Nancy era. But yeah, Big Long Sliding Thing, I've heard that song. You don't really ever forget that one. But yeah, I mean, double entendres in like the blues and black R&B back to the 30s and 40s, and even jazz, so-called race records from the 20s, 30s, and 40s were definitely pretty dirty and not fit for playing on white suburban radio stations.
Yeah, Dr. Demento used to play some of those once in a while.
Yeah, there was a guy in Missouri at the University of Missouri radio station who used to play stuff like that all the time. He had a show called Shake 'Em On Down. It was like the best hour of college radio I'd ever heard up to that point. Sugartown's a weird song. I started singing it to my son, my 8-year-old son. I said, I heard this song last night. It goes like this. Shush, 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 shush. And I sang it, and he said, I was sure you were going to say shit. When you finally get around to the other half of that word, shush, shush, shush.
Yeah, that whole shush, shush, shush did kind of strike me as odd the first time I heard it.
Well, and there's something else about the way that she's shot during that sequence. There's her teeth are so straight and narrow, like they actually kind of scared me a little during that song. There's something, maybe it's the LSD, but that song was a little bit uncanny somehow, the performance of it in particular.
And we haven't mentioned, so this is after her balloon ride, and the balloon lands, she shrugs, gets out of the balloon and starts walking, and the song starts up. And so she's just kind of walking around in the woods as she, quote-unquote, sings the song. And what I really loved about it was the end, how she's walking off into those sunbeams. I thought that was a really good way to represent the fade out.
And let me spend my life in Sugar Town.
Yeah. No, the directing and the editing are pretty clever. Throughout this piece, I was just we'll talk about the Sammy Davis Jr. sequence in a moment, but the editing of that sequence is just it's crazy, man. It's mad editing. Anyway, so what does this have to do with Batman 66 again, Tim? Is it the occasional bell bottom?
It was 3 days before Eartha Kitt appeared as Catwoman, that's all.
Well, yes, that's true.
Yeah, so then at the Nancy walking off into the sunbeams dissolves into the moon and the beginning of Some Velvet Morning,
where we see an extreme long shot of Lee Hazelwood on his horse in silhouette.
Yeah.
Coming, just riding along from right to left.
And, boy, I found both the song and the video of this really fascinating.
Some velvet morning when I'm straight, I'm gonna open up your gate and maybe tell you about Phaedra and how she gave me life
I may have mentioned this to you before we started recording, but when I was in graduate school, maybe in like 1993 or 94, late night on WTTW, the PBS affiliate, and quite a famous PBS affiliate in Chicago, played this in the evening. We had my ex-wife and I had no idea what it was. We'd never seen. We knew that it was Nancy Sinatra because I think that we came in on Some Velvet Morning and then stuck around at least as long as Jackson, the following song. Mm-hmm. And so we knew who Nancy Sinatra was. We didn't know who this guy with, the anthropomorphic mustache was. And we were just completely knocked out by it. It's like, what could this possibly be? We didn't have any TV listings. We didn't know what was being shown. But it was like, ooh, it looks like music videos from the early 70s. But anyway, that was my first exposure to this special, but I had no idea what it was at the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, the beginning of the song, I think, is really interesting because, it's all strings, and it sounds like it's going to be kind of a slow, melodic ballad type of song.
Yeah,
and
but then it shifts gears pretty rapidly.
It shifts, to a different key and gets a little faster.
Mm-hmm. Which kind of warms us up for the fact that it's going to switch between common time and 3/4 time as we go back and forth between Hazelwood's piece of the song and Nancy's piece of the song, which is, basically a different song.
Yeah.
Flowers growing on a hill, dragonflies and daffodils, learn from us very much. Look at us, but do not touch. Phaedra is my name.
Yeah, that whole time signature thing is really interesting too, especially like the ending part where they're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah, some velvet morning when I'm straight, learn from us very much. I'm gonna open up your gate. Leah Hazelwood, I think my personal nickname for him from now on is going to be Lee the Nose Hazelwood, because his singing style is so centered on nasality. But I like that about it. It's certainly gives it a character that's impossible to miss.
Now, Hazelwood says that he's no longer with us, but he wrote it solely with the special in mind and didn't think it would make any sense outside of that context. But a friend of his who did radio programming insisted that it would be a hit if they put it out. So it did come out as a single, and it got to number 26.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's been described as a psychedelic duet, and that seems to fit it. If for no other reason than the fact that it switches time signatures every 12 measures or so.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I had this rather long chunk of stuff from musicaficionado.blog that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
The recording session for Some Velvet Morning took place at Capitol Studio in Los Angeles in the fall of 1967. It was produced by Hazelwood, who took Nancy Sinatra's career to new heights after Daddy Frank asked him to help his daughter. Let's see, we talked about some of this already, so I'll skip down a little bit. The arranger on the session was Billy Strange, who also wrote the magnificent string intro that sets the tone for the whole song and conducted the orchestra. Unlike many sessions in those days that benefited from overdubs, in this session they recorded the entire song live with the band, the full orchestra, and Lee Hazelwood and Nancy Sinatra singing, all at the same time.
Wow.
Which is pretty surprising.
It is. I would have expected that the song was spliced together from just from the differences in time signature, but I suppose in a way you couldn't really pull it off unless you thought of it as a whole, because otherwise it would just sound like a bunch of spliced tape, accidentally juxtaposed 3/4 and 4/4 time.
Yeah, it would sound like the tape that the Beatles cut up for the background of Mr. Kite.
Yes.
The Calliope music.
Right. I think maybe need to talk about Phaedra, but we'll wait on that for a moment. I can't believe that Lee Hazelwood says at the beginning of the song, some velvet morning when I'm straight, I'm going to open up your gate, which sounds very definite. And then he says, maybe I'll tell you about Phaedra. So why did you open the gate?
Damn it, I'm maybe going to. Possibly.
I'm definitely going to open the gate. Maybe. I don't really know what I'm going to say, though. I'm just going to open the gate.
Some Velvet Morning plays perfectly to the sexual mystique that Hazelwood and Sinatra established. Lee was aware of this and later said, "We were accused of doing a lot more than just singing, so we decided, well, hell, we might as well play it up." The duet features Hazelwood's low voice contrasted by Sinatra's childlike role of Phaedra. So, and that gets into some of the Greek goddess stuff that you already talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were a lot better than all those fairy tales, the Greek myths, that came from Germany that had killings and knifings. There was only about there were only about 7 lines about Phaedra. She had a sad middle, a sad end, and by the time she was 17, she was gone. She was a sad-assed broad, the saddest of all Greek goddesses.
Now that's a sympathetic take on the Phaedra character. Well, didn't Phaedra sleep with the Minotaur and end up giving birth to a bull?
Something like that. I know there were, it like often happens with Greek myth. There are 3 different contrasting versions of the same story, yeah. And I wasn't even sure what to put in my notes. But yeah, he's right that she died very young. Fictional, of course, but
well, yeah. In the story, she died young. Yeah, she's a Cretan princess.
Well, you're looking that up. FT.com. Talking about this song says, but like the contrast between his vocals and hers, there is another more carnal interpretation of what those lyrics might mean. Hazelwood's sudden move to Sweden in 1971 at the height of his popularity added to his mystery. Had Frank Sinatra really put out a hit on Lee because Lee and Nancy had grown too close, or was Hazelwood just avoiding the tax man?
I'm guessing the tax man.
Yeah. Did you find anything about Phaedra and how she gave me life and how she made it end?
How she made it end? Yeah, I don't know if that ever happened, but well, here's the deal. She fell in love with Hippolytus, even though she was married to someone else. She was married to Theseus. And Phaedra wrote Theseus a letter that claimed Hippolytus had raped her, and then Hippolytus, depending on the story, was either killed or scared half to death. And then Phaedra kills herself, I guess. So she didn't sleep with a bull. So that's, kind of just...
Well, that's a plus.
That's kind of a letdown, I realize. But, yeah, I mean, it's a tragic story. She was in love with someone other than the king of Crete, to whom she was married. And then when that was discovered, the lover was either killed or scared off entirely. But again, depending on the story, she either kills herself or not. But Hippolytus is Theseus' son by another woman, so it's family intrigue.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so she was sad, but I don't really know what that has to do with daffodils and stuff. I'm sorry. It's the end of a long term, and I'm having a little trouble holding this all together. But what's the off-color interpretation of this song?
Well, I mean, the very first time I heard it, I thought straight could certainly have a sexual meaning. I'm straight, and I'm going to open up your gate.
Well, yeah.
That could be very sexual.
That's true.
I'm not sure if that's how he meant it, but it... interpretations in the eye of the listener, or the ear of the listener.
Right. But to whom is he actually speaking?
Because yeah, that was confusing.
He talks about Phaedra in the third person, but then Nancy's playing the part of Phaedra.
So yeah, at first I thought he was talking to her, and then I realized she's Phaedra, and he's talking about her. So who's he talking to? Mm-hmm. We have no idea.
And one would never get the sense from the song that Phaedra is sad. It sounds more like she's victimizing the or, like a siren song. She's sucking the protagonist in, and perhaps never turning him out. In that she's, she gave me life and made it end. So it sounds more like she's the villainess rather than the kind of victim, or the victim of fate, if you will, from the original mythology. Mm. Anyway.
Yeah, we could go on and on this song.
It's true, and I've always understood straight in that sense to mean sober.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it's supposed to mean, but...
What it's supposed to mean, yes. Rope, stay straight.
Yeah, and then the long sliding thing is a trombone.
Yes. Exactly. Yes, it's all perfectly squeaky clean.
Okay, well, let's move on to the second commercial break, which is someone named Roby Porter in Spain.
Escape, come over to Royal Crown Cola. It's a mad cola.
Of all places.
For some reason.
Roby Porter himself was Australian.
Mm-hmm. And a slide guitarist in the beginning of his career. He did some slide guitar instrumentals.
And I'm not even sure what he's doing here. I mean, he didn't have much chart success in the U.S., so no. I don't think he would have even been recognizable. I guess he acted on a few American TV shows, but not like starring roles or anything. Yeah.
That's our next podcast topic, Mannix. I don't believe I've ever even seen more than like 15 seconds of Mannix in my life.
Yeah, or the 21st century version would be Personix. No, get rid of all the gendered language.
Jeez. Okay. What? As you wish. Yes, Personix. Right.
But anyway, he's in Spain and he's singing dramatically, and there's that dang glass goblet full of RC on ice again.
Yeah. Why this guy advertising RC? It seems more like a promo for him than for the soda.
I think so.
Certainly our Royal Crown Cola was much better known in the United States than he was. After all, as Art Linkletter has told us, it's the country's most fastest growing cola, which, if you take that literally, sounds as though it's about to take over the earth. It's about to swallow us all. Somebody stop it from growing.
Okay, and we come back, and then we've got Jackson.
Let me mention something really quickly, though. Okay. Listening to the whole show again with headphones on, I realized that while the special proper, that is the songs and the plot, the Tom Mankiewicz, plot stuff that glues the songs together, that's all in, it's been mixed or remixed in quite realistic sounding stereo. It's not just like, left channel, right channel, like they used to divide up Beatles tracks when they would, play the mono tracks. They would record them in stereo, but it was the fake stereo of just, having the vocal track in one ear, one speaker, and everything else in the other, or something along those lines. But there's this quite beautifully mixed, realistic stereo mix for the songs and the plot, but all the ads are in mono.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, probably tells us something about the stereo mixing or remixing being done specifically for the record. But, most of the dialogue, I expect, doesn't appear on the LP. So why would that all have been mixed in stereo? Perhaps it was mixed in stereo just because of the DVD release in the early 2000s.
Well, it seemed to me it went to mono during the dialogue. Like at the end of Jackson, when they're talking and Frank Sinatra Jr. drives up, then it goes to mono.
We're gone to Jackson. Ain't never coming back.
Hi, sis. You want a lift?
Hi. See, somebody loves me.
Yes, yeah, I guess you're right. At least the dialogue does. Maybe the music.
I think the music has to go to mono there too.
Oh, okay.
I recall noticing that. But yeah, of course, this is a song that was made popular by Johnny Cash and June Carter earlier that year, 67, released in February. And as I did with a number of the covers in the special, I listened to their version and compared it to this version. And it's a pretty big contrast where, the Johnny Cash, it has that Johnny Cash chug to it.
Oh, yes.
We got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. We've been talking about Jackson ever since the fire went out. I'm going to Jackson, I'm gonna mess around. Yeah, I'm going to Jackson, look out Jackson Town.
Where this one sounds, like a more modern country song.
It's played a couple of keys lower, isn't it? It's a couple of steps lower to match with Hazelwood's incredibly low voice, or the low register in which he tended to record.
Mm-hmm.
We got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. We've been talking about Jackson ever since the fire went out. I'm going to Jackson, I'm gonna mess around. Yeah, I'm going to Jackson, look out Jackson Town.
But they do a good job of kind of, fitting the action with the lyrics of the song. Let go of my coat and all that.
I love that. And it's still Nancy doing her baby doll thing with her voice, as opposed to June Carter, is really pretty much bellowing her lyrics in this wonderful. Go ahead, get your health. She just really cuts into it. It sounds like she's really PO'd at Johnny.
We'll go on down to Jackson. Go ahead and wreck your hell. Go play your hand, you big talking man. Make a big fool of yourself. Yeah, go to Jackson. Go comb your hair. Honey, I'm gonna snowball Jackson. See if I can.
Well, go on down to Jackson. Go ahead and wreck your health. Go play your hand, you big talking man. Make a big fool of yourself. Yeah, go to Jackson. But go comb that hair.
I'm gonna snowball Jackson.
Go ahead and see if I care.
But this seems more subdued in a lot of ways. And at the end, the pantomime, Hazelwood is even sort of stroking her arm like he's trying to get her to calm down and come back to him instead of trying to leave her. So that's all kind of interesting. But when Frank Sinatra Jr. drives off with Nancy and Nancy says, "See, somebody loves me," that long take of Hazelwood's reaction shot looks like he just took a dump in his pants. That face, I've never seen. A face is such it's like disgust bled of all energy. Maybe he just really hated Frank Sinatra Jr. I mean, who didn't? Who didn't hate Frank Sinatra Jr.?
And I was looking at the lyrics, and I never would have figured it out if I hadn't looked at the lyrics, but there's that line about, she says, "I'll be behind my J-Pan fan."
Yeah, go to Jackson, you big talking man. And I'll be waiting there in Jackson, behind my J-Pan plan.
Japan fan.
Yeah, J-Pan fan. Yes, that's hard to comprehend, unless you've listened to it 4 or 5 times and or found the lyric sheet somewhere.
And I noticed, too, that the Cash and Carter version, I think it's the last verse, they say, "That's a fact," but it kind of is off of the rhythm. It's not really enough beats, and so not enough syllables. So the Sinatra Hazelwood version, they say that's a natural fact.
I'm going to Jackson. And that's a fact. I'll go to Jackson. and that's a natural fact.
Which, yeah, sounds more natural itself.
Yeah. Although I don't know what an unnatural fact would be, but...
I believe natural in this case is spelled Natcherel. Natural.
Natural. So Frank Jr. gives her a lift. They drive off. And then there's a dissolve and there's another car coming. But Frank Jr.'s gone. And it's just Nancy driving. And she's in a completely different outfit. And it's raining. And she drives up to a guard shack. And I think that this must have been on purpose. We've been conditioned by the opening to think Frank Sinatra is going to be standing there.
Sure.
But instead it's a mannequin. And the camera kind of zooms in on it.
Personican, Tim.
Oh, sorry. Personican.
This week on Person X, a Personican salesman attacks Person X for, well, anyway.
So that's interesting. And then all the rest of the song, she's like walking among mannequins, Personicans, who are wearing clothes and frozen in different poses.
Yeah, some of them like party goers. There's one guy fishing off the wharf, wearing big rubber boots. Yeah, all mannequins that you're singing about this town, which is dead, kind of a dead end, chew you up and spit you out kind of town. Which I guess you could say is personified or mannequinified or personicanified by the frozen people.
This town is a lonely town, not the only town like this town.
Yeah. Now, I'd really like to know where this was shot, other than, it's obvious when she's walking under the Golden Gate Bridge that shot is in San Francisco, but I'd like to know what that building is she's walking around.
At least we know it's not Spain, because Roby's in Spain.
And there's no glass goblet in the scene.
Right, singing about that mad cola.
And she changes outfits twice during this video.
Mm-hmm.
This is a song that it's written by Hazelwood, had been recorded by Frank Sinatra, put out just a little bit earlier, and his version is quite different. Did you listen to it? I sent you the link.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's much jazzier, more upbeat. Starts out with harmonica.
This town is a lonely town, not the only town like this town.
Was not a big hit. Only got to 53 on Billboard. And I like his version, and I like this version in a different way. This kind of sort of solemn use of brass. I mean, it feels sort of like a almost prototypical 60s pop song to me in a way, or like a certain type of pop song or arrangement that you would only find in the 60s.
Yeah, and possibly only on a Lee Hazelwood produced album. This is, kind of his signature sound.
With the brass and the strings and...
Yeah, it's sort of like a hush-hushed big band. It's almost like the same version of the band for the Frank Sinatra version of the song, but, quieted down, the same arrangement, but with a much more, as you say, a somber tone.
The Frank version, the ending makes a little more sense to me. After the line that it's a till you're found town, then he just kind of vamps into a fade out.
And abuse you town until you're found town.
This town is a losing town. It's a miserable town.
But Nancy just kind of stops there. That's and that "till you're found town" line doesn't seem significant enough to me for that to be kind of the closing line.
And abuse you town until you're found town.
I don't know about that. I was thinking about that watching this whole special again, and what I thought was going on there, and I could be wrong about this, is that that's kind of the way that Nancy performs it anyway. That's kind of a turn in the song, like "Until You're Found" kind of flips over the depersonalization that she's describing about the town up to that point. It's like, there is a possibility of being found, even though the town can leave you lost. So to finish that way ends it on kind of a note of optimism that kind of completely comes out of left field. So in that sense, yes, it doesn't really fit, but it's an interesting twist if it's meant that way. Because most of the songs on this that I can think of that Nancy sang, whether they were written by Hazelwood or not, certainly on the Boots record, have this kind of quality of expressing deep loneliness, but somehow coming back around to the possibility that she can stand on her own 2 feet. And again, it's like, there's always a man involved in making her feel like she can stand on her own 2 feet, but not every time. In some cases, she's, desperate, but she figures out how to survive by, like, the song "I Move Around" from Boots is really about escaping to all corners of the earth because she doesn't want to see the guy who cheated on her anymore. But, at least she's doing something. There's something of that, that kind of wistfulness about losing someone, but nevertheless figuring out that there is something else you can do that her songs seem to kind of circle around all the time.
So she wraps this up and she's sitting down, and then you see someone kind of wandering in from the distance. And
yes, it's very dark. It's night when all this is taking place.
And it's Dean Martin.
Of course. The fairy god uncle.
Yeah. Now, did you notice this is the one song that's in mono?
Yes, I did notice that.
And this is one of the songs that's not on the soundtrack album.
Oh.
And as far as I can tell, at the time, it wasn't on any album.
Huh.
It was released as a single and hit number 5.
Well, that wasn't uncommon for, singles to be released apart from any album. Even the Beatles did, a number of those.
But the fact that it charted so high was kind of a little surprising to me. I think it's kind of easy to forget that the Rat Pack were still having hits in the 60s.
Well, yeah, and in a way they were at the height of their powers, because there was a moment at the end of the 40s in which Frank Sinatra was pretty much done. His career was over, basically, as far as any critic who was working for Billboard or Hit Parade or whatever at the time.
He was David Cassidy in 1978.
Exactly. There's no more, except that somehow he ended up pulling himself out of it, and I don't remember exactly which album it was that really pulled him out of it, but there's a moment where he's quoted as saying, "I'm back, baby," after a recording session, and he very rarely ever got hyped up about recording sessions. He felt as though he'd grabbed something back, and his career did take off again from there. But the Rat Pack really gets going in the early 60s, so this was probably their finest moment as far as their fan base and what they represented about this kind of sophisticated entertainment.
I see. Including lots of girls in bikinis. Oh, wait, that was maybe not the high point, but it depends on your point of view, I guess.
Yes, depends on what we think of as high, how we're defining it here. So what do you think of Dino's performance? This is Dino, the man who pretended his entire career that he was an alcoholic. That was part of his shtick. But he was, as far as I know, usually like the first to go home. He was not a drinker. He was not an alcoholic, but that was part of the... I mean, he did drink, but he was, much more a social drinker than almost anybody else in the Rat Pack.
Huh.
And but that was his, part of his actorly persona, and he played drunks in various movies like Rio Bravo from 1960, John Wayne Western.
Mm-hmm.
Got an old slouch hat. Got my roll on my shoulder. I'm as free as a breeze, and I'll do as I please, just a bumming around. Got a million friends, don't feel any older. I got nothing to lose, not even the blues, just a bumming around.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Dean Martin performance. It's fine.
It's kind of like a force of nature. I mean, I don't even know his music very well.
No.
But every time I see him perform, it's like somehow the song is already done before it started, because you know what the performance is going to be like. It's going to be kind of clever and kind of funny, and he's going to do a lot of patter and, make funny gestures that seem kind of artless and yet, work really nicely as, a little bit of physical comedy, but also smoothness. And he walks around with a cane, and he taps people, and he brings them back to life. There's
Yeah, taps the Personicans.
the Personicans, yes.
And, they come to life, right. Yeah, and those little dings are in the song when he touches them with his cane.
Perfectly timed, too.
For my Movin' With Nancy playlist, I did buy an MP3 of this, but it's a different recording with background singers. There are no background singers in this version. Mm-hmm. And there are also no dings. That was particular to the special.
Well, I can imagine, just bumming around.
Now, this song was written by a guy named Pete Graves, who's quoted in Wikipedia as saying he lifted sometimes lyrics from other songs.
Well, he lifted the melody from Walking in a Winter Wonderland.
So that's what I was going to say, yes. It sounds a lot like Winter Wonderland and also somewhat like New York, New York.
Yes. A beautiful sight, we're happy tonight, just bumming around. Indeed.
So, yeah, it seems like this was just put out as a single at the time, and yeah, it showed up on some greatest hits albums of Dino's later, but...
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I liked how when he brings the figures to life, it's done in a really smooth way. Technically, it's not the bewitched kind of jerky switch to it. Turn off the camera, make the person
replace
change.
everything.
Yeah, and then bring them back on and turn the camera on again. It's smoother than that.
Right. I don't think the song New York, New York existed in the mid-'60s, did it?
I'm not sure when it came out. It might have been a couple years later.
Well, I think it was much later than that. It's the theme song from Scorsese's New York, New York from 1977.
Okay.
And then Sinatra didn't record it until the late 1970s.
Okay. When it was kind of in my consciousness in the 1980s, I assumed that it was older than that. But because I didn't think Frank Sinatra had a hit in forever. It was my impression anyway.
I see. No, it was apparently written for the film. It was a Scorsese film that really flopped. It was an attempt at a musical by one of the new generation of Hollywood directors, and Liza Minnelli initially sang the track.
Mm-hmm. I see. All right. Well, maybe New York, New York was ripped off of this song.
If I could make it there, walking in a winter wonderland.
So he comes upon Nancy, and they have a little scripted talk. As you mentioned, he's her fairy god uncle, and he wants to try to cheer her up.
I love it when she asks about the stick, and he says, "Well, it ain't Twiggy." Just to make certain everybody knows we're in the mid-60s here.
Well, hi there, and whose little girl are you?
You wouldn't believe it.
Yes, I would. I'm your fairy god uncle.
Fairy god, Uncle?
See? You didn't believe me either. Tell me, what's the trouble, precious little god niece?
Well, I've just sung a very, very sad song, and I'm depressed.
Well, I sing a lot of sad songs. I never get depressed. Other people get depressed, but not me. Anyway, with this stick,
Is that a magic wand?
well, it sure ain't Twiggy. Stand up now. Let me lay a little spell on you, huh?
They got to throw in a topical reference.
And then they sing a duet, Things, which was a Bobby Darin hit from 1962.
And a song that I believe Anne Murray re-recorded in the 70s at some point.
It wouldn't surprise me. She re-recorded everything.
That's true. She cried the tears, I wiped them dry. She was confused. Well, anyway.
So I listened to the Bobby Darin version on YouTube, and the part that Nancy is singing was the backup singer's part in Bobby Darin's version, pretty much. They changed some of the lyrics of her part for the special, but some of it is the same, but it's the backup singers.
Interesting.
Every night I sit here by my window, staring at the lonely avenue, watching lovers holding hands and laughing, and thinking about the things we used to do.
Think about things,
Like a walk in the park,
things,
like a kiss in the dark,
things.
like a sailboat ride.
Yeah.
What about the night we cried?
But it was also, listening to that version, I'm thinking, boy, music had really changed in those 5 years. From 62 to 67. It's pretty amazing when you think about how, well, we talked about it a little bit earlier with Up, Up, and Away, but how much creativity there was going on in the music in that era.
Well, yeah, and how diverse it all was. How many different strains of popular music there were kind of simultaneously coexisting.
Yeah, it was changing so fast.
I've never heard Darin's version. How does it compare just in terms of, like, tempo and arrangement?
That's pretty much the same.
Okay.
Yeah, compared to some of the others that I've contrasted, there's not an awful lot of difference between Darin's version and this one.
Well, it's interesting. It's very peppy, and Dean Martin's the Fairy God Uncle introduces it as a sad song to cheer you up.
Yeah.
And it's not a particularly sad song in terms of tempo, but it is a fairly sad song lyrics-wise. It's about, these are the things we used to do, and you don't really know from the lyrics whether he's, whether they're estranged, whether she died, whether, but something has happened to the couple, and all he's got left is the memories.
Yeah, it sounded to me like the spark had gone out of everything. It's kind of the same as Jackson.
Well, yeah, kind of, except there's more regret expressed here than Jackson. In Jackson, it's all about, like...
Rather than I'm going to go off and party and screw around.
So forget you, baby. Dance on a pony keg all you want. That's what I do when I'm trying to, anger a lover. I will dance on a pony keg.
So they sing that, and they have a little kiss at the end. And then we go to commercial break number 3. Inexplicably, from the empty Hollywood Bowl, Dino, Desi, and Billy.
Escape! Come over to Royal Crown Cola. It's a mad, 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 mad cola.
An actual band, folks. They were a real band.
Yeah, I never knew that Marsha Brady's heartthrob Desi Arnaz Jr. was in a band.
As far as I'm concerned, I think you're the tops yourself.
Me?
Bye-bye.
never wash this cheek again.
Yes, with Dean Martin's son.
Yeah.
Of all things. And whoever that other guy was, their friend.
Billy Hinchy, who was their friend. So, between 64 and 69, they were putting out records. According to Wikipedia...
None of which did very well. They were never much of a success.
They didn't play their own instruments on most of the records.
Right. So,
even though they appear to be doing so in this commercial.
Yeah, which makes me wonder, whether they're just, mimicking.
Yeah, probably. I don't know what the point is of doing it from Hollywood Bowl when there's no audience, but...
Well, there wasn't really any audience for poor Roby in Spain either, so...
but Hollywood Bowl is a concert venue, so the point of being in Hollywood Bowl is a lot of people go to see you.
Well, there's, this is maybe what's going on here is a kind of flouting of the variety. We talked about the variety show format where, usually everything is recorded live in front of an audience. And, it's just, it's kind of like, vaudeville format. You move from one act to the next without much connection between them. But this special flaunts its globality. It's able to go anywhere. It doesn't just stick around in a single theater on a single stage. It goes to Spain, and it goes to the Hollywood Bowl, and it goes to the woods somewhere or other. So it seems like at moments like this, it's just trying to show us that this is an anti-variety show.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I did copy some of the stuff about Dino, Desi, and Billy into my notes from Wikipedia.
I'm so sorry.
Their biggest hit was called I Am a Fool. It hit number 17 in 1965. And soon after, it was covered by Alvin and the Chipmunks.
And I believe later it was covered by Milli Vanilli, who also didn't play any of their own instruments or even sing their own vocals.
And then later that year, they had a number 25 hit, Not the Lovin' Kind. And this was before any of them had turned 15, it said.
Jeez.
And then they toured as the opening act for the Beach Boys, also in 65.
And the Beach Boys apparently liked them.
And opened for Paul Revere and the Raiders, Tommy Rowe, whoever that is, Sam the Sham, The Lovin' Spoonful, and the Mamas and the Papas. But they had no more top 40 hits after 65.
They were motored by, star parents alone, it seems. Desi Arnaz and Dean Martin were just dragging them along, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay, so we come back and we're in the segment that we talked about on To the Batpoles, where Nancy is a fashion model and Sammy Davis Jr. is the photographer who for some reason is named Bruce.
I don't get that. Everybody knows it's Sammy Davis Jr.
And then Nancy says, "Gosh, Bruce." And I thought, you'd mean Dick Grayson here?
No. Oh, it's horrible. That's what it is. Unbelievable. It's not coming alive. It's quelle ordinaire. It's dull. It's not happening.
Gosh, Bruce, I just don't feel it today.
I beg your pardon. Did you say you didn't feel it? Well, I know how to make you feel it, because I'm going to put something on the record player to sock it to you. Then you'll feel it. Wait here. Don't move. Besides, I'm running out of color film here.
Holy hot pants, Bruce.
And I also didn't get why, at the beginning there, Sammy's speaking in a British accent.
Well, I think he's off camera. The voice is all coming from off camera at that point. So I think it's just another way of disguising that it's Sammy Davis Jr. And then, having him pop out. I got to admit, after watching him dance, I'm suddenly a Sammy Davis Jr. fan. I'd never been one before, but that guy could move. Wow. Yeah. But it's a fun bit, but it does, beg the question why, you'd say ostensibly at least, Dean Martin is playing himself because he's only referred to as the fairy goduncle, and we know that, he's been friends with Frank Sinatra for a long time and probably has known Nancy since she was tiny. So the idea of him as an uncle kind of still puts him squarely in the role of Dean Martin. But why have Sammy Davis Jr. play another character? That's just a little bit out of place, I guess.
Yeah, who knows how they came up with the concepts here. And we didn't mention the song is What I Say, the Ray Charles hit.
Yes.
Hey, baby, don't you do me wrong. Come and love your mama all night long, all right. Hey, all right. See the boy with the diamond ring. He knows how to shake that thing all right now. Hey.
Sung by Nancy. Sammy is not singing. He's just dancing and taking pictures and having pictures taken of him by Nancy.
Yeah. It is weird that he doesn't perform. It seems like there's still this kind of, de facto segregation going on in this scene, weirdly. She's singing a song by Ray Charles, an African-American musician, but Sammy is not singing. He's just doing this kind of shuffle. Then the dancing is great, but it also reminds me a little of minstrelsy dancing, the kind of shuffle that was attributed to African Americans by white blackface minstrel singers and performers, from Al Jolson all the way back to the beginning of the genre. So it is a little bit strange that he's not performing, even though the other guests perform. Well, I guess Frank Sinatra Jr. doesn't perform, but God, aren't you glad he didn't open his mouth to say anything? But hop in, sis.
Yeah, and so of course the big thing about this scene is that Uncle Sammy, Bruce, also gets a kiss. But they had to time it at the end of the shoot when Sammy didn't have any more time left to reshoot it.
Yes. Quite cagey of them and quite cagey of Sammy. But, you notice the kiss is not on the lips. Not quite, anyway. The kiss between Dean Martin and Nancy Sinatra is on the lips, but this one is just to the sides of the lips. It's about as close as you can get to the lips without it being the lips, but it's not quite there.
So, and as they kiss, they're holding a photo of Nancy.
Everything's groovy!
Yes, sir.
And the camera zooms in on that and then dissolves to a photo of Frank Sinatra. And so the rest of this segment to the next commercial break is kind of focused on Dad.
Oh, I would say focused is putting it a little bit, it's downplaying it a bit too much. This is like Frank worship. This is a shrine in this special.
Yeah, well, and you notice kind of Nancy's whole sort of attitude changes, and she seems kind of like a little girl for the rest of the segment.
Yeah, wait till you see him.
Yeah, she sings the next song is Wait Till You See Him, which was originally Wait Till You See Her, Rodgers and Hart song from the 1942 musical By Jupiter.
Wait till you see him, see how he looks. Wait till you hear him laugh.
And then the track that Frank sings is a Rodgers and Hammerstein track, correct?
Yeah, that's Younger Than Springtime.
And what musical is that from?
Ooh, I guess I didn't get that in my notes. But yeah, so as she's singing Wait Till You See Him, she's walking among huge photos of Frank Sinatra,
including a huge photo of his bare butt as a baby.
Yeah.
Oh, it's from South Pacific, of course. It's from South Pacific.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, then we go from that baby into sort of a retrospective of Frank kind of growing up, and film footage of him in the 40s performing, and
photo of him smoking a pipe at apparently the age of 11. That's a little weird.
But yeah, the film I found interesting. Like, if you contrast it with like the Beatlemania film, I mean, it's the screaming girls, but they seem a little more restrained and more kind of, "Aw, isn't he cute?" rather than, screaming their lungs out.
That's true, although there's
seems a little more innocent.
A little bit, but there's quite a bit of ardor in the young woman kissing the photograph of Frank.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like she's like totally making out with this photograph. She's probably got newsprint, all over her face when she pulls the photo away.
So, yeah, we get all of this Frank worship, and then Frank appears himself. Well, he's ostensibly in this recording studio.
With Billy Strange conducting, right?
Yeah, Billy Strange conducting, and
Lee Hazelwood
in the
board.
booth. Mm-hmm. And the whole orchestra there, and Frank singing with a cigarette smoking away on his music stand. I was waiting for him to go, "Younger than springtime, Emma."
Yeah, older than coal mines are my lungs. Maybe he needed to clear his T-zone before he hit that high note. Anyway.
Younger than springtime are you, softer than starlight are you, warmer than winds of June is the gentle love you give me, gayer than laughter are you, sweeter than music are you, sunlight and moonbeams, heaven and earth are you to me.
And Nancy comes in, and she's like watching as he sings, and she waves, and he waves with his necktie.
Watching, she's practically got her tongue hanging out. She's like, "Oh, yeah, Frank."
She's all smiles.
Oh, not smiles. Her mouth is kind of half open, like, oh, the wonderment of it all. Like she's, come up against a god or a force of nature or something, or Daddy. And remember, in the opening credits of the show, he is described simply as Daddy, as the word Daddy appears under his face as he's, apparently shaking his finger at Nancy's car as it goes by when he's dressed as the security guard.
Yeah. But I did find it kind of touching, like, after the song is recorded and they're playing it back and listening to it, and he kind of puts his arm around her head.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was touching.
It is kind of sweet. And then what's the business about, Hazelwood says that's better than black-eyed peas on New Year's Day.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Lee, could we hear it just from the bridge out, please?
Play it back for me. That's better than black-eyed peas on New Year's Day.
That's a phrase, that's a idiom I've never heard before, but I'll take it. I mean, maybe black-eyed peas do taste better on New Year's Day.
Yeah, and then after they play back the song, then Frank says, "You don't like that, baby. You don't like black-eyed peas." And if you listen really carefully, you can hear someone else say, "on New Year's."
Yes.
Helping him finish the line.
Beautiful, beautiful. You don't like that, baby. You don't like black-eyed peas.
Yeah, that seems surprisingly spontaneous for as staged as it must have been.
Mm-hmm. Then commercial break, Nancy again for RC in sort of a psychedelic bit with a spinning camera, and Nancy dancing behind columns and coming out from behind each one in a different colored outfit. Mm-hmm. And much more of a bewitched technique there. It looks a little jerkier.
escape. Come on over to Royal Crown Cola. It's a mad, 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 mad cola. RC, the one with the mad, mad taste.
A little bit, yeah. But the spinning camera is kind of picked up from the Sammy Davis Jr. sequence, where eventually all the cameras are turning completely upside down, and we're a little bit off balance ourselves.
So then we come back, and Nancy's had a haircut during the commercial break.
Yeah. She switched wigs. Now she's wearing her Lola Heatherton wig.
There's the next SCTV reference.
More SCTV references, yes. Ha ha! Ha ha!
And she's singing Friday's Child by an oil well. This is another...
The song was written by an oil well?
No, it was written by Lee Hazelwood. But she's standing by an oil well as she sings it, or walking around one.
Friday's child, hard luck is her brother. Friday's child, her sister's misery. Oh, Friday's child, her daddy they call hard times. Friday's child, that's me.
Now, the thing about this song is, especially in a video version, it doesn't quite work if you listen to the lyrics. Like, good looks clearly didn't pass her by, as you can plainly see.
Yes. She's not so ugly in conventional terms.
No.
Although those scary narrow teeth, she looks kind of like she has a picket fence in her mouth, but maybe that's just bad orthodontia.
And this had been a hit for her in '66 from the album Nancy in London. Mm-hmm. Anything else to say about that? Maybe not.
I don't think so. The show kind of tapers off for me at that point.
Yeah, I thought so too.
We get into the final track and there's, all that dancing. I feel like I'm watching, some kind of, Sid and Marty Krofft variety show for kids from Saturday morning in 1974 or something. It's like, I'm supposed to like this.
Yeah.
And you know that somebody is supposed to like it, but it's kind of difficult to figure out who that might be.
That's how I always felt about that kind of dancing. Well, before we get to that, we got one other song, See the Little Children.
Oh, yeah.
Another Hazelwood song, and his songs always have a little bit of darkness to them.
See the little children laugh and sing, laugh and sing. Fantasy is such a common thing, common thing. Love is why the flowers grow, a ball of red and blue. I wish they never had to know love can hurt them too.
Yeah.
Even one that seems to be really sweet and all the footage of children running around, but the idea of it is like, the kids will have to grow up and feel the hurt of love.
Yes. Mwah, 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 mwah.
But what really struck me about this video, did you notice the clothes?
Well, it's not a video, strictly speaking. It's shot in 35 millimeter, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
The clothes the kids are wearing, and particularly the girls, everybody's wearing a dress. And I realized, so 3 years later, when I was in kindergarten, little girls still dressed like that. Because I remember little girls coming to kindergarten in dresses.
Interesting.
Which I think by the end of the 70s, that was gone.
Yeah.
As far as I would... Right. I mean, I wasn't in kindergarten anymore at the end of the 70s, but I don't think little girls dressed like that to go to kindergarten anymore.
Do you even remember what our little sister Deb wore to kindergarten?
No, I don't.
I can't put my head around it. I think I remember her wearing pants and shorts primarily at that age, but
yeah,
not dresses.
But yeah, that it's kind of brought back some memories, seeing what the kids were wearing.
Yeah, interesting. But they're all going to grow up and their lives are going to blow, so let's just give up on children, too. I'm Lee Hazelwood, and I approve this message.
Okay, yeah, then the last song, Who Will Buy, a song by Lionel Bart. Her hair is now long again, and...
she must have gone to the Fuzzy Pumper barber shop and had a Play-Doh squirted through her brain pan.
Filmed at Pacific Ocean Park, I was able to find out, and it's an amusement park in California.
Yeah, it looks like because it's it's a Lee Hazelwood production, at least in part. It looks like the kind of amusement park that is proto shut down. It's going to symbolize loneliness in a few moments when everything stops and nobody shows up.
Yeah, this song, I wondered. Now, you're familiar with the band Broadcast?
Only slightly.
Their album from 2000, the name of which I always forget, the Noise Made by People, I think it's called. There's a song on that album called Until Then. And to me, this song sounds a little bit like that. Nancy's vocal part sounds a little bit like the string part in Until Then.
Who will buy this wonderful morning? Such a sky you never did see.
That whole album has kind of a 60s feel, and kind of the same kinds of songs that you could kind of imagine Nancy Sinatra performing.
Interesting.
Like this, or her version of This Town. And I kind of wonder if Broadcast sort of had this song in mind, even. It'd be interesting to know what the process of that album was.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know enough about Broadcast to be able to corroborate that, but I'm interested in finding out.
Yeah, so this is a song that starts out slow and kind of stark, and then it gets faster, and there's this long instrumental break for the the David Winters dancers to do something that someone must find entertaining.
It ain't me, but...
And almost win an Emmy for choreography, by the way, but...
I guess you get the closer you get to throwing your arms and legs out of joint, the closer you get to an Emmy.
And you always have to bend over and walk towards the camera. That's the main move here. That move especially makes me think Jewel Hallmeyer.
Yeah, me too. I'm expecting more jazz hands at that point, though, if this were really Jewel Hallmeyer. Well, at least, nobody had to shave because Nancy had already driven past them and shaved them all. Maybe that's what happened to her hair in the previous couple of scenes. Anyway.
It blew off when she was driving.
Yeah, she drove past herself and blew off her own hair.
Now, I wonder why this song has a huge instrumental break. If it was planned that way for the special, for the dancers.
I suspect so.
I almost wondered if they were imitating MacArthur Park, except that song came out a year later, so that can't be the case. No. Maybe MacArthur Park was imitating this. I don't know.
That seems highly unlikely, but stranger things have happened.
So, yeah, other than it being particularly planned as a place for a dance break, I'm not sure why the song would have such a long instrumental section.
Now, it seems like it's all variety show logic at that point that's running the show.
But did you notice, just as the dance part ends, and we jump to Nancy in the roller coaster, did you notice it seemed the change in the music seemed really abrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Who will buy this wonderful morning?
Yeah, well, if you listen to it on the soundtrack album, there is, after the instrumental break, there's that pause, but then there's a few more bars of instrumental that kind of play in Nancy's vocals that are cut for the special.
Mm-hmm.
Who will buy this wonderful morning? Such a sky you never did see.
I suppose because they didn't have anything to show on screen during that section.
I suppose.
Or cut for time. I don't know. I mean, it's not that much time, but I'm not sure why they cut that out. But
I'm sure that none of it is random. It just feels random to watch it. It doesn't feel like there's an obvious logic to it. Or maybe I was just tired of staring at Nancy Sinatra doing stuff over the course of this is quite a long special. If you include the ads, which were part of the hour, it really is a full 60 minutes of entertainment of some kind.
Yeah. Then we're back to Art Linkletter,
who's going to teach us about the coconut,
the cola nut.
The cola nut, yes.
This is Art Linkletter again. And now I'd like to take a minute to tell you a story that starts on a tree plantation in Nigeria. Green leaves shining in the sun. Hidden in the leaves, a tropical fruit ripening. And inside that fruit, a nut. A nut that has created the wonder drink of our time. Yes, this is the cola nut, a mysterious, hard-to-get little fellow that unaccountably seems to weave a magic spell once it's put inside a beverage bottle.
I was really hoping he was going to teach us about cocaine. Seeing as, that used to be the Coca and Coca-Cola.
Yeah, we're going to show you how cocoa works. And then it's ground into a fine white powder.
And dried. Dried very carefully, and then, the original growers are all killed because they know too much. Anyway, but yes, to have Art Linkletter lecture to us about the cola nut being grown on a plantation somewhere in Africa. What is it? Africa's just like... Africa's like a country when it gets described in ads like this. It's just the big landmass with lots of people on it, but there's no...
Americans don't know geography anyway. Why get more specifics?
Certainly not African geography. But considering Art Linkletter's so close to his associates at Royal Crown Cola, why don't they tell him more about exactly where this stuff is coming from?
Maybe they don't know either. It just comes in on a boat and it's from somewhere in Africa.
Well, they're too busy choosing between the poor farm and Millionaire Acres. Sorry, I can't get the Game of Life association out of my head with Art Linkletter.
You will learn about life when you
play the game of life. Sigh.
So then we're back to Nancy in another outfit, and she says goodbye, gets back into the balloon, but she's singing, "I Gotta Get Out of This Town" again.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our trip. Thanks for coming along. Let's do it again real soon. Bye.
I gotta get out of this town. I gotta go someplace.
In my beautiful balloon. No.
Yeah,
just getting out of this town.
Closing credits. But, I was wondering, I didn't think to mention this earlier, but in the shots of the balloon flying, I wonder who's actually in the basket. I wouldn't think they'd bother to send her up there for those far shots where you can't see who's there.
Well, no, I wouldn't think so either. There are shots in the opening, in the up, and away sequence early in the show where she's clearly in the balloon, but it's impossible to tell whether the balloon is really very far up in the air or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there is that kind of sleight of hand in various places. I didn't mention, during Some Velvet Morning, there's a section there where Hazelwood is on his horse riding along the beach, and there's a close-up of him, and he's ostensibly riding, but I don't think he's on a horse there. I think he's just kind of rocking back and forth. I mean, it wouldn't make sense, really, to to have him on the horse there. And I don't think the background is moving either. The water's moving. Gives the illusion of movement. But yeah, I don't think he's on a horse there.
Well, sometimes you're on a horse, sometimes you're not.
But supposedly he didn't use drugs, so he was on the horse in that, or off the horse, or I don't know, depending on which metaphor you want to use.
On the wagon, off the wagon, on the horse.
He wasn't using horse, but he was on the wagon, yes.
Right, he was on the wagon, but off the horse, except he's on the horse. Of course. Yes, this is all leading up to Lee Hazelwood producing Mr. Ed's first and last record. A horse is a horse, of course. I'm gonna open up my gate.
Wilbur.
And tell you about Wilbur. Who gave me life and gave me oats.
Yes.
This is, of course, the only prep we're going to need to do for our Mr. Ed podcast, which begins next week.
Oh dear, we might lose all our patrons.
Yes. Well, we've already lost them. We're probably about halfway through this. You get what you pay for, folks. You give a little extra, this is what you get. But seriously, thanks for your patronage, your Patreonage.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this is an enjoyable special overall. I've watched it, 4 times now. But yeah,
it's certainly a time capsule. It's
yes.
If I were going to try to teach someone what 1967 was about, I would probably give them this first, at least in American pop culture.
Yeah. And then there is that little album, Sergeant Somebody's Band,
something Boney. Carts, Crub, something or other. Anyway.
Yeah. So, thanks for listening, and we'll be back some other time with some other random podcast topic that has nothing to do with comics or Batman.
Oh, you lucky people.
I want some peaches and cream. I'm tired of nothing but plums. I gotta get out of this town. Let me out of this town. I want out of this town. Gotta get out of this town. Gotta get out of this town.
Movin' with Nancy was brought to you by Royal Crown Cola. RC. It's the Mad Cola. RC, the one with the mad taste.
We hope you've enjoyed our Movin' with Nancy discussion. In 2 weeks, we'll be back with another episode of To the Batpoles, in which we'll discuss Harlan Ellison's 1965 Batman 66 treatment, The Two-Way Crimes of Two-Face. Back in 2015, Paul and I discussed the comics adaptation of that treatment, called Batman 66 The Lost Episode, by Len Wein and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. But now, 6 years and many Batpoles episodes later, we decided to return to that comic and the treatment itself and dig a lot deeper on both. So join us here in 2 weeks at the same Bat RSS feed. To the Batpoles Movin' with Nancy special is a production of deconstructingcomics.com.